Good evening and welcome to a Thursday night edition of the Buddy Martin Show and Podcast. Stand by, more to come.
Yes, it's time again for Buddy Martin. Call him up and tell him what you're thinking. But be kind because he's doing the best he can.
Better, stronger, faster.
Mama says that alligators are ornery because they got all them teeth but no toothbrush.
Hey, what if the voice calls while you're gone?
Take a message.
Bye!
You ready, champ?
I'm ready for this my whole life.
I'm incapable of small talk. But that's why you love me, right?
Kind of intimidating to be in the presence of so many great athletes.
Good evening and welcome to the Buddy Martin Show and Podcast on a very chilly Thursday night. Yes, fall is here and winter is coming. I'm Buddy Martin. The program is called the Buddy Martin Show. Tonight, coming up shortly, we'll have Chris Doering getting his thoughts on a couple of things like how does this matchup work between Florida and Michigan in the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl. His thoughts about the UCF thing. It just won't go away. Another article today written in the Orlando Sentinel suggesting there was some kind of collusion to keep UCF out of the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl, although it's been denied and numerous times, especially by Scott Strickland. We'll tell you more about that later. And we'll revisit the SEC Championship game. We'll get a chance to talk to Chris Doering. I want to look at this game and ask the question, as I did today when I talked to Zach Abolverdi and a few other people. Did a show in Denver today, my friends out there, talking about, did Georgia blow that game or did Alabama just take it from them thanks to Jalen Hurts? Because you can tend to focus on the fake kick as the reason the game was lost. Or you could think, what a comeback story for one Jalen Hurts. That's the glass half full. Later in the program, it's a big recruiting weekend. I've told 15 visits this weekend coming into Gainesville. And it looks like things are wrapping up for Dan Mullen's recruiting program. And there's some pretty good names, I understand, coming this weekend. We'll hear from Zach Abolverdi a little bit later on about that. And chat with you. And we'll have Monday night, we'll have our recruiting specialists on talking about those kinds of things and getting a little more determined, a little more definitive with what's happening there in the world of recruiting, some of the names, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, yeah, right now, though, it's time to go out to the hotline. I believe if we can get a hold of one, if we get Chris or not here. It's one of those nights when the phone doesn't want to answer. We'll keep trying there in just a moment. Call Chris back. And the recruiting stuff is such an important part of the cycle because this particular class, we know, we talked about this, that it's really the stair-step theory, that the next class and the next class are going to define the quality of this team. I think personally, as someone said, it might have been Lynn Tyndall, and good evening to all you folks out there, by the way, to Eric and David and Mike and James and Gene, etc. I think Lynn Tyndall said he looks at it this way. Georgia has 5-star players, and Georgia has a 3-star coach. Conversely, Florida has had 5-star coaching and 3-star players. That's obviously a reach in that regard to make the point.
Yeah, buddy, I love my job. So
on some things. He has a great quote, which I'm going to read to you. We're going to reach out to Chris Doering, who, of course, is with the SEC Network and has some thoughts about, I'm sure, the matchup as well as this game, which, you gotta say you're happy with the fact that Florida goes to the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl, but you're also not too happy to be playing Michigan. I think we've sensed that here over the last couple of days. And talking to Zach Abolverdi today as well, we also determined from him, hearing from his folks, his listeners, he said that they're not happy about it either. But hey, look, you take what you got. You take a New Year's Six bowl for sure. So, we're going to have to dial Chris straight up on the phone because he's not answering his call. Let's try the other way. Go the old-fashioned way, the cell phone, and pipe it right in there and see if we can get him now that way. And he is ringing one time and hanging up on us. Where are you, Chris? All right, we'll try it one more time. Maybe the cold weather changes things. I don't know. Anyway, stand by. What I'm going to do is I'm going to play a commercial, and then I'm going to come back, and if I don't get Chris right away, we'll get a hold of Zach Abolverdi and talk to him about recruiting, and we'll get back to Chris after that. So let's take a little break here and come back and talk about those things, okay?
Job-related accidents create incredible stress on your finances, your relationships, and most importantly, your sense of well-being. When the adjuster is not approving benefits you're entitled to by law, you need Dan Hightower to help you understand all of your legal options. Daniel L. Hightower has been fighting for accident victim justice in Ocala and statewide since 1976. Call Daniel L. Hightower today to better understand all your legal options. 352-629-7777. Job
76. We do have on the phone now Chris Doering. We couldn't get him on our Skype line, but we have him here on the cell phone. Good evening, Chris.
Hey, buddy. How you doing?
Good. How was your trip to New York?
Oh man, it was a long trip. I left Gainesville last Thursday, went to Atlanta for SEC Championship weekend, and then flew out right after the game to Charlotte for shows Sunday and Monday, and then shot up to New York Monday and spent Monday and Tuesday night there, watched the Gators in the Garden on Tuesday night, and got to get back here in town yesterday. So it's been a whirlwind for me, man.
Well, there's no place like the Garden to watch a basketball game.
No, I love
Special
it, man.
feeling.
Especially when we win. Last time I was up there was the Duke game. We lost.
Yeah.
Oh shoot! I was there for the Sweet 16, the Elite Eight, and I was there when we played Duke. I think 2 years ago in the Jimmy B Classic. So it's been cool, man. Yeah.
And we got a little frigid weather up your way in Gainesville tonight, and down here in Ocala, it's getting that time of year. Good football weather. But unfortunately, most of the games these days are played inside after the minor bowl games. Talk to me about this so-called conspiracy theory being put out there again by Orlando media folks. This time not Bianchi, is saying that there's collusion to keep UCF out of the Peach Bowl. Have you read that story? Do you know about it? And what do you think about it? You want me to read part of it?
Yeah, give me a little bit. I haven't read the story.
Okay, the story, this is written by the person who's the content director there, a blogger. She says, "We may never learn the real story behind the UCF Knights bowl bid. A selection process cloaked in secrecy and college football politics have combined to cast doubt on exactly why the Knights are heading to Arizona to play LSU in the Fiesta Bowl instead of taking a shorter trip to Atlanta to face off UF in the Peach Bowl." I'll pause right there and say, would you be complaining about getting the payday to go to the Fiesta Bowl for crying out loud? But anyway.
That's what I was going to say. Is first off, I mean, they went to Atlanta last year. I would have thought for a little change of scenery, getting to Arizona would have been a nice treat for that team and the fan base.
Right. So anyway, it goes on to talk about Scott Strickland saying it's not true. Explaining that he's part of the college football playoff selection committee. He told the Sentinel and Mike Bianchi, he actually called him, that he recused himself during the discussions of the game. He said, but most UCF fans don't believe him. Well, really? I mean,
I can tell you this, buddy. I was fortunate enough to get to go to one of those CFP committee mock drafts or mock committee meetings, and I got to participate as Ty Willingham a couple years ago when he was on the committee. And anytime a discussion came up that involved Stanford or Notre Dame, I had to recuse myself from the situation. So I know very well any ties you have, whether it be a school you're at now, a school you used to be at, a school you have a family member at, you have to excuse yourself from that conversation. And I'm sure Scott Strickland did exactly that when it came to discussing the Peach Bowl.
I go back and forth, and I'll read a couple more paragraphs on this UCF story. One day I'm thinking, no way they should be playing Florida. What Florida got to gain from it? And then when Milton got hurt, I thought that would be unfair. And then even if you beat them, what do you have? And I started thinking, well, you know what? UCF probably deserves a shot, to play Florida. And then I get to this story, and I think, you know what? It's been reduced to whining now again, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, here's the thing, and I feel badly about this mindset that I've developed for UCF. I have a lot of negativity when it comes to that program, and I think it stems from this national championship claim from last year. I thought that was a bit overboard, and it's kind of turned me off. And so, I'm anxious to watch LSU hopefully beat them down in the Fiesta Bowl. I'm of the belief that they're going to get exposed. They had a great team last year. They had a great year. They beat Auburn in the Peach Bowl, which was nice, but I think you'll see a difference in physicality between LSU and what that rush defense for UCF offers.
Well, you're right, and you said exactly what I was going to say, and what I feel is that after a while, it's like the elephant in the net. I'm not saying out of disrespect. I'm saying that it's annoying, and you get to a point where take what you got. I mean, first we heard complaining about not getting a chance to play for the national championship. Now we heard about unfair selection on the bowl, and now we hear this conspiracy charge. And now I'm to a point where, you know what? I'm like you. I'm getting to a point where not only do I not care, I'm kind of wishing they get whacked and they shut up.
Yeah. I mean, there's two teams that I'm looking forward to getting whacked in the postseason. That's UCF and Notre Dame. I was hoping they'd get an Alabama matchup, and so Alabama could do it to them again. But I'm hoping Clemson does it to them here instead and shows that they were not worthy of being in the Final Four.
All right, here's the other paragraph, and we'll move on to something else. But this story goes on to say, it said, National football writer Brett McMurphy, I won't even comment there, said during an interview Wednesday on 96.9 The Game, the Peach Bowl had a gentleman's agreement with playoff officials that it would not have to take a Group 5 team for 2 consecutive years. This, he suggested, meant the Gators weren't behind the Knights' trip to the Fiesta Bowl. One problem. The story doesn't match up with what UCF leaders were told by Peach Bowl officials. The Peach Bowl organizers gave UCF glowing reviews for its fan support last season and told school administrators they would love to have the Knights back for a second consecutive year, a source told the Sentinel. They insisted it was out of their hands and the selection committee would assign the bowl as they saw fit. Anyway, there you go. So enough already.
Yeah. Let's move on.
Yeah. I want to get to you. I want to talk to you about the Jalen Hurts story. Because you, as a champion of the underdog, one of the world's greatest walk-ons ever in history, that you're a champion. You like the underdog story.
Yeah.
This story, this is kind of an underdog, a guy who was on top of the world and then fell off the top of the world and then went to the bench and could have gone south. If you've ever been benched or you ever lost a job or whatever, you know what it feels like, and it's a horrible feeling if you put a lot of pride in what you do. You have two choices, and this is what Terry Bradshaw said last night. You can have a pity party for yourself, get done, and decide, are you going to just sit there and like a bump on the log and be a detriment, or are you going to take each day and try to go get better, and when your chance comes, you be ready. Well, this is the consummate be ready story. This guy was not only ready, he was better. And the throws that he made in that game, which we all know he couldn't have made a year ago, is a credit to his coach, and it's credit to him, and a credit to his attitude. I think this is one of the best stories of the year, maybe the best story in several years, the Jalen Hurts comeback story, who was in the arms of his parents crying after he got demoted in the hotel room, and he said to his father, "Dad, what are we going to do?" And his dad said, "We're going to fight." And he went back out there, and look what happened. Great story.
Yeah. It is a great story, and you think the thing I think I relate to the most about it is his commitment and perseverance. In a day and age where everybody just wants to move on when things don't go their way and find somewhere else to play and toss in the towel, this guy was committed to his team. He was committed to his coach, and he was more so committed to himself. And I think exactly what you said, the fact that he worked hard every day so that when that opportunity did arise, that he was able to take advantage of it, because there very easily could have been, a day where he wanted to, just feel bad for himself and sulk and not improve. But you mentioned it. He made throws this year that we didn't see him make last year, and we've seen him do it all year long. I credit Coach Saban, I credit Mike Locksley, but I really credit Dan Enos. And Dan Enos is a guy that's much maligned as the offensive coordinator at Arkansas before taking the quarterback coach job in Tuscaloosa.
That's right. I forgot about that. He was, wasn't he?
Yeah, so he's done a great job, I think, in working with both of those quarterbacks, and I know that both of them have given him a lot of credit for their development this season. So just a lot of good vibes and good pats on the back to go around for that story.
Yeah, very good. And you mentioned one of the key component. It's easy to overlook and take for granted the job that Nick Saban does, because he wins everything, and you get tired of it. But when you get right down to it, it takes a lot of skill for a coach. Number one, to keep having to get new coordinators every year or two. But secondly, to keep replenishing players, keeping them happy enough to stay on the team. Although I think probably Jalen will be gone next year. But he managed to get through it and convince Jalen that he could be a contributor to this. And he said to him, "This is your time now," as he went on the field. And Saban had not one but two quality quarterbacks and was prepared for the situation when it came up.
Yeah, two things strike me from this story. One, the emotion that Coach Saban showed after the game when he was interviewed, and even after in the postseason or post-game press conference. I mean, you could visibly see how much he cares about this kid, how grateful he is for the commitment that he showed to him and his team. And just really, that was a rare glimpse at some emotion from a guy that typically doesn't show much. The other thing that I liked about the story, and you may or may not have heard about this, was Mike Locksley getting on the headset with Jalen before he went in, discussing the plays that Jalen feels most comfortable with, the things he likes the most, the things that fit his eye the most. And those are the plays they end up running. And I think more times than not, coaches want players to do what they want them to do. I think Mike Locksley has obviously done a great job this year, not only in play calling, but play design and integration of talent. But he did a nice job of working with a guy that hadn't played a ton of snaps this year to make sure he was as comfortable and as confident as he could possibly be going into that situation. That's what coaches are supposed to do, and that's what they do. They develop talent, put players in positions to be successful.
And there I bring up the name Urban Meyer, but I mean the point is that his 2006 team was the consummate example of he had players that he had to rehabilitate physically and mentally and other reasons to get them back on the field at the end of the game. And those players came back and played key roles in the national championship in the last 2 or 3 games of the year. He never dumped them overboard. He took them to work with them. For all the things they say Urban did bad with players, he had a great ability to get them rehabilitated and get them back on the field and play and contribute and become, because he coached every player on the squad, not just the first 44, and that's that sign of you got to coach deep these days.
Yep, no doubt about that.
Let's talk about this bowl game. It's a little hard to get excited about it, but let's talk about this team. And earlier today, Tim Tebow was talking about it's hard to get up for a game. when you've lost a big game. I think that's what happened to Florida when they lost to Georgia and turned around and lost to Missouri after that, because they got up. Remember, they carried them into the fourth quarter, and even though the final score looks like it was lopsided, the last touchdown was kind of a fluke to sort of put it up in the air and take it in. But if you want to talk about Georgia playing Alabama really great, which they did for the final couple of minutes, up until the last 10 minutes of the games, the Gators played Georgia pretty well too. I'm not saying they would have won that game. I'm just saying that they were competitive. So now the question is, after riding the ship and beating Florida State, getting a chance to go to a bowl, how much motivation is it going to take by the coaching staff for this team to get ready for Michigan?
I think that's the key, not only in this game, but it's every bowl game. Because right now, what are we dealing with? We're dealing with kids that are trying to make up their mind whether they're going to even play in bowl games, which is something that we never even dealt with when I was back in college. Guys worried about getting hurt, guys worried about going to the NFL. So it's really it's a study in motivation, right? I mean, how can you get your guys ready to go? What can you convince them the reason to play hard is for? This is something it's lost on me, because anytime we had a chance to put on the orange and blue and go out there and play, it meant something special. And so I hope that Florida's ready to go. Florida has not looked good against Michigan the last two times out, and 0-4 in the history of that short rivalry. But I would like to see the Gators. They got a lot to play for. I mean, we talk about getting the 10th win in year number 1 of Dan Mullen's tenure in Gainesville, which is pretty hard to believe given where they were last year. It's an opportunity to kind of set a precedent for next season. It creates some momentum going into 2019. You got a big game to open the season next year against Miami. So what a great time to get some young guys an opportunity to play in this one and get coached up during the bowl practices. So there's a lot to play for, and I hope they come out ready to go against Michigan.
Yeah, like I say, motivation, as you know, is a lot. And it's a long time. There's a delay, 2 or 3 weeks off. There's recruiting by the coaches. Easy to lose your focus on a bowl game. And if you just, aside from the motivational aspect of losing 4 games, and Mullen is not going to, he's going to want to break that streak too. He loves breaking the streaks, as he said, against Florida State. He was delighted he was the team. His team broke Florida State's string of bowl appearances and winning seasons. He's going to want to reverse that for sure, and he'll be trying to use that as a motivational tool. But one of the things that's lost on this too is this extra time to get better and to play Emory Jones at quarterback in a package or two and take a look at some of these young players. Maybe we'll get a chance to see Jacob Coleman. Maybe we'll get a chance to see players we haven't seen before. Jacob Copeland, who I'm anxious to see on the field. So there's a lot of benefits to this bowl game. And the biggest one to me ought to be able to be getting a 10-win season. That is a biggie to me. Is it to you, Chris?
Yeah, I think it is. It's a huge mark for this team. And I think looking back, I mean, I said it earlier in the year, I was very critical of a lot of the flaws that I saw in this team. But I thought that one thing that you could point to is there was improvement from week to week, and there was also a great coaching in terms of putting guys in positions to be successful and minimizing the weaknesses that they had on their existing roster. And so, I think 10 wins is a gold star for the coaching staff. It's a gold star for these players, and it's a huge momentum swing for this team. The big difference between finishing 9-4 and finishing 10-3 and winning your last game heading into the off season. I can tell you, I won my share of bowl games and lost my share of bowl games, and it's a much better winter program when you go into it having coming off a win than it was coming off a loss.
Exactly. A couple more for Chris Doering, SEC Network. The question brought up about Barry Odom pulling off the coup with getting Kelly Bryant, which is a bit of a surprise. Were you surprised at that?
Yeah, I was. I thought Arkansas was going to be the landing spot given the similarities between the offense that he ran at Clemson and what Chad Morris does at Arkansas. But at the end of the day, I mean, you look at it, there's a lot of positive things going on in Columbia, Missouri right now. And we had TJ Moe, the former Missouri wide receiver, on my show this morning. and talk to him a little bit about, the expectation for next year. If you look at their schedule, the schedule gives them an opportunity to win their first 8 games going into Athens. And if you're 8-0, you got a chance to go into Athens, and maybe a tough deal to pull off, but you pull that off, and now all of a sudden you're in the mix to potentially get to Atlanta. Barry Odom gets the new contract extension. Kelly Bryant announces that he's coming there. There's a lot of positive stuff going on that has this fan base really fired up, and a lot of folks think this may be the second best team in the East next year. I think you got to throw Florida in that mix too, but there's going to be some competition in the East. I think even more so than maybe what we saw this year, and that balance of power between the East and the West obviously has swung back to the East for the first time, with them winning the series for the first time in 10 years, which was nice.
It really has. A little surprised. I thought Missouri's offense was more of a pro style. Kelly Bryant's kind of a RPO guy, I guess, and I didn't know if that was a good match, but I guess they must have thought it was.
Think about this, though. What is his goal? His goal is to get to the NFL. And one of the reasons we saw Drew Lock decide to stay for his senior season at Missouri was because he wanted to develop himself so he could speak more educatedly about NFL defenses, about NFL offenses. He didn't feel like he was very well prepared in Josh Heupel's offense that was run there his first 3 seasons as the quarterback in Missouri. And maybe that's what part of the draw was for Kelly Bryant is, hey, I need to be exposed to a little bit more NFL style. A guy in Derek Dooley, the offensive coordinator who coached in the NFL with the Cowboys. He did a great job this year with that offense. I thought they became much more physical. They were able to run the football more effectively and still retain some of their ability to throw the football down the field. So I like what they're doing. I like what Derek Dooley did in his first season as a coordinator, and maybe that was part of the draw in the end, was the difference in style and exposing Kelly Bryant to something he hadn't played in before.
Absolutely, that's certainly a good point. Somebody else mentioned the competition was not too keen there in Columbia either for him, so he can walk right in and probably take it over. We've talked about this before. There's another level of recruiting, and I know Florida's got 15 kids coming in this weekend. You've got to also start recruiting and thinking about transfer and grad transfers. I wonder who will pop up on the screen and what will happen. Who will be the next person to transfer? There'll be some next spring, obviously, because you have people. What do you think the odds are that Jalen Hurts will graduate and move on to someplace else?
I got to imagine it's pretty high. I mean, the guy's a competitor. Imagine he wants to try to give himself the best opportunity at the next level. It's got to be tough to sit, especially with all he accomplished, winning a national title, winning the SEC Offensive Player of the Year his freshman season. I mean, this guy has been used to playing meaningful snaps, and to have to come in late game situations and a mop-up duty must have been a little humbling for him. But as we said before, it all paid off in the opportunity to win the SEC championship for his team. And, I think he wants to play football. He's a competitor, and I would expect him to do everything he can to get himself in a position to where he can play as the starter next year, whether that's in Alabama or whether that's somewhere else.
Where would be a good fit, Chris?
Oh, man, Florida, maybe. I don't know. Be nice to see what he could do in a Dan Mullen offense. I think folks have talked about Auburn. That might be a little too close for comfort to have him switch sides in that rivalry. I know the Tennessee folks feel like they got a pretty good shot at getting him from what I've heard and talked to up there. So
it might be a good fit up there.
Yeah, those are a couple that I've heard of. I don't know, man. What do you think?
I just don't see him going to Auburn. I mean, I know a lot of people saying that. I think he just feels like he's a cut above. You know what I mean? And I don't think he's a vengeful type of person. I don't know. I don't say. I think Tennessee makes some sense. I'm trying to think of an offense that would fit his style of play. He's improved on his run on his RPOs a lot, and I think he could fit into a lot of offenses. They don't need him in LSU. They don't need him. How about Kentucky? I don't know.
There was a story that came out that Terry Wilson had been banged up. His knee had been bothering him since I think it was either Texas A&M or even before Texas A&M. Yeah. And so, when he's healthy and at 100%, he can be a very effective quarterback, as we in the Swamp saw. He threw the football well against the Gators, but they lost that element of the pass, vertical pass, for much of the second half of the season, and they became very predictable and easy to stop. So they definitely could use somebody that could throw the football more consistently.
Here's a thought by our chief knight of our Gator Nation Kingdom, Len Tyndall, says he might follow Loxley to Maryland.
Yeah, that's a possibility as well. Yeah, I mean, I think clearly they have a relationship and a comfort with the offense that's being run there, so that might not be a bad plan. Although I can't help but think there's a little bit of him that wants to compete in the SEC again, and maybe even have a chance to knock off Alabama at some point.
Yeah. All right, so you're doing the SEC XM Series show. What days are that you're on there? And
I'm on Monday through Friday, 7 to 10 a.m. on Sirius XM channel 374. That's the SEC channel there on Sirius.
Who you with?
Peter Burns is my co-host.
Okay, all right. Yeah.
Yeah, so PB and I get to work on TV and on radio together, and then I'll be back in studio for the bowl games. I think I'm in studio the semifinals Saturday the 29th.
Right.
31st, 1st, and 2nd. So we'll have a bunch of bowl coverage going on during that time of year.
How was your season? Did you enjoy it?
I did. It flew by, didn't it? I mean, I think it seemed like just the other day we were getting things kicked off, and to wrap everything up in Atlanta this past Saturday, it just seemed like it was too quick, man.
You had a good year, man.
Thank you.
Appreciate you,
buddy.
Appreciate you being on the show tonight.
Yeah, anytime, man. I'll talk to you soon.
All right, pal. Thank you, Chris Doering. He's the Rudy of Florida, except he was a better player. He didn't like being called the Rudy of Florida because Rudy obviously wasn't the quality of player this guy was. He wasn't even a good player. Chris was one of the great players at Florida and still holds receiving records in the SEC. And, boy, what a story he has to tell. Okay, we're going to catch up now with a few things. We're going to hear from Zach Abolverdi. We might hear from Terry Bradshaw tonight. We'll see if we have time. There's a great quote here, which I got it. It's from Terry from last night, and it's talking about players who, when you get in a bad spot in life, or you've lost your job, or you've lost your starting assignment, whatever, and you're going through a crucible. There's this great quote from a guy named Wentley Phipps. Some of you probably heard it last night, or may have heard it during earlier in the week. But Terry said he uses this in his speeches a lot, and he says the first time he used it, he's messed it up. He said he had to look up the word crucible to figure out what it was, but this is a great quote. It is in the quiet crucible of your personal private sufferings that your noblest dreams are born and God's greatest gifts are given in compensation for what you've been through. Wentley Phipps. I asked him where he found this. He said he found it, he heard it on a New Orleans TV station. And he called the station to try to get a hold of it. It took him a while, and he uses it a lot. It's a heck of a good, I'm going to put that on my wall. I got a feeling maybe Jalen Hurts has got it on his wall. I don't know. As you know, in life, sometimes you get a lot of curveballs. You just have to play through them, don't you? All right, let's take a break here and come back and finish up and take your questions if you have any, your thoughts. Appreciate you folks hanging in there. And we do have Zach coming up, David, so hang in there. Let's go with this right now. Let me see if I want to tell you about, if you need anything for Christmas, I got 2 places you can go and check out stuff. If you need men's clothing or if you want something to do with the Gator stuff that you can order, or hats or shirts or whatever. Let's start with our friends at All Florida Sports. In talking to Tony, you still work on that package. And also, if you need like stuff for women or whatever, go to the website, allfloridasportswear.com. You can order them and get them there, and you can probably get a G&K discount if you ask nice. And Tony will give us more information on that a little bit later on, All Florida Sportswear. Now, for you ladies out there looking, and you men too, particularly you ladies, what do you get them for Christmas? It's always a big question about what do you get them for Christmas? Well, this is what you get them for Christmas. This is something that is a tradition around Ocala. And it's a place you can go where if you don't know what you're going to get, well, you can find out, get an idea from these people. At 405 East Silver Springs Boulevard in Ocala, it's Grinders for Men. The thing about Grinders is that they have a terrific selection of things, but if you're not sure and you're shopping for somebody else, you're not sure about style or color or what's age appropriate, they got people in there who do this very well. And the comfort of going in Grinders and not being pushy, not getting salespeople all over you, trying to sell you something, they don't do that. They've never done it. They just ask you your question, try to show you what they got, and let you make your decision. They have great brands. The stuff in there is terrific and very well priced for the quality of clothing you get. I would trust them with anything. I went in recently and bought a coat, and I wanted to pay a little more and get a good coat, and I did, and I still got a good buy. I knew the quality, and David had it finished and tailored and up and ready to go in a matter of 2 days. And the service, they go out of their way to give you good service. And I would suggest if you get a chance, go into Grinders. You can go online and check out their Facebook page too and see more. We'll get some more samples. I keep promising I'm going to go show you a picture of my sport coat, my black sport coat, which is great, which as I was trying it on, but I haven't gotten to it. I'll put it up here soon. But anyway, it's an Ocala tradition for 62 years. Grinders for Men. Check them out, 405 East Silver Springs Boulevard in Ocala. Center State Bank, my bank, I use it for a couple of reasons. Number one, it's a good bank, and I have all my banking business and my loans and what have you through Center State Bank. And then for the community aspect of it, because they've been so supportive of things I've been a part of, including any charity events or clubs or weddings or things of that nature, quarterback club meetings, etc. They have a facility there that's built just for that. That beautiful building on Silver Springs Boulevard there has a second floor, which is a place you can go and have your charity event. You can serve food, whatever, in there. They take care of you as a client and also as a community member. That's why they have the title on their motto, as they do, centered on community and customer service. Get online right now if you're anywhere in the state of Florida. There are 82 locations in 30 counties in Florida to serve you. Several around here. You can look it up and see. Go to centerstatebank.com and find out what they're about. Their core values are locally market driven. They have a long-term horizon. They have world-class service. They believe in relationship banking, and they believe in faith and family. My bank right there is at Silver Springs Boulevard in Ocala. You can call them at 352-368-6800. Center State Bank, centered on community and customer service. One more thing before we hear from Zach Abolverdi. WinStar Medical Research, another local business here that's involved in the community. And among the things they do, there's big supporters of the Scott Brantley Trophy, which is going to be announced. The winner is going to be announced sometime in spring. Or in February, We have our list down to 4. There are 4 outstanding young men. Trent Whittemore from Buchholz in Gainesville, who is going to be a Gator, by the way, committed to play for the Gators. Brian Dillard of Lake Weir, who led his team to the only playoff win in the history of the school. All-purpose person, offense, defense, plays both ways. Brian Maurer, who's a Tennessee commit, quarterback from Ocala, Westport High School. Terrific young man as well. And also Kimo Clark from Vanguard, who's a running back who had 1,176 yards rushing, 21 TDs. They're the 4 finalists for the Scott Brantley Trophy, as selected by a group of scouts. And now we're going to narrow it down to 1. Then that winner will be announced. Meanwhile, WinStar is a superior medical research facility involved in the community and helping do research for diseases like Alzheimer's, psoriasis, osteoarthritis, migraine, fibromyalgia, and other conditions that affect us in our communities. They do clinical research studies that are required by the FDA to have the safety closely monitored. They do that. If you want to know more about that or about taking part in a study that's going on now on Alzheimer's disease, you can go online at Rensstar Medical Research. Go to rensstar.net and look up Rensstar Medical Research and find out what they say. Rensstar Medical Research, seeking tomorrow's answers to the health questions of today. Okay, let's see what we got for time here before I commit to doing this. I better go ahead and hold off on the Bradshaw interview for the moment, and we'll hear from him in the morning. Don't forget Football Friday tomorrow, 11 a.m. We'll have several people on, including Franz Beard. He will join us. We'll have Joe Williams, our weekly wagers. We'll have the guy who wrote the book on high school football playoffs. We'll look at the high school playoffs, in fact, some local schools in it. And Richard Burton, who's one of the world-class writers who wrote the record book for the high school playoffs, will be joining us tomorrow as well. It's a big recruiting weekend, though, and a lot of talk about that. And we talk with Zach Abolverdi of Gator Bait. Well, it's coming on the postseason. It's getting to be close to the hot time for recruiting, and one of the guys who stays on top of that, among other things, as managing editor of Gator Bait magazine and as co-host of the Tailgate, Zach Abolverdi has been doing this with us for a while. We're glad to have him back and talk about what was on his show this week. A lot of recruiting talk, I understand, Zach.
Yeah, absolutely. Buddy, first of all, thanks for having me back on. Hope you're doing well.
Always doing good to talk to you.
This time of year, man, this is what the fans want to talk about. They get excited. And rightfully so. The coaches are out on the road. The recruits are tweeting out all these photos from the in-home visits. Fans see that these guys are then going to come on campus for official visits. It's a really exciting time, and there's a lot of good news happening for Florida.
Well, let's get to some of that good news. But first, it's trending upward for Dan. It certainly has been ever since, I'd like to say, since he got off the plane chomping. But the truth is that there was a little lull after losing 2 in a row, and people were, along some of Marion County, there all of a sudden a lot of potential Gators in Marion County,
no doubt,
particularly at schools like North Marion, certainly even Dunellen now. There's a terrific young player. And, of course, Vanguard, where they're loaded. They already got 2 commits there. And the best class is 2 years away at Vanguard.
Yeah.
So, and Florida very much in the picture there. I've got a kind of a spy at Vanguard, and this spy tells me that when they come in force with several assistant coaches, and they put on the dog. They make it very personal, and that Dan Mullen's staff is in the house. And so they're making a strong push in places like that where the programs are quite good, as you know.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's what you have to do, buddy. You need to make sure that you take care of those areas and that you hit those needs. And I think that with this weekend, there's really some special potential. I mean, you're talking about 15 guys coming. That doesn't happen. I mean, they didn't have double digits at all last year. McElwain and Muschamp never had double digits like that. And I think it just speaks to where this class is at. The fact that they've been able to build their numbers and commits up to the point that they have so many guys on board. And now you try to bring in some of your key targets that you're trying to close out the class with. And you have these other guys now on campus to help you recruit them. And these are big names that are going to make a difference in those recruiting efforts. So things are shaping up well. You look at from the Peach Bowl bid to the top 10 ranking, buddy, to the season that they had, a lot of positive momentum going in Florida's favor, whereas with some other schools, things aren't trending that way.
Are you feeling the buzz on your show in the afternoons, or are you feeling Gator fans getting a little more jacked up now?
Yeah, and the one thing that you hear people say all the time, buddy, is, sort of going to have a top 5 class, or are they going to get 5 stars? That's the 2 questions everybody asks, and I get it. But that does not, at least in your first full recruiting cycle, define your success. 2-3 years down the road, yes, you need to be getting those guys, and Mullen wants to get them more than anybody. But, for fans to want that or just feel like that's the be-all, end-all in terms of judging a successful recruiting class, not in year one. Me personally, I don't think so. I think, though, you come back next year, you beat Georgia, or you find a way to get yourself to Atlanta, then you should be one of those teams. But right now, buddy, Florida's not a top 5 team, so I don't necessarily know that they should be expected or it's a birthright that they need to be getting top 5 recruiting classes. That's where Dan Mullen's trying to get them to. But I feel like you win like that, you recruit like that. And they're ascending in that direction. They got to keep doing it. The key for me, though, is fill your needs, beat your rivals and your competition that you got to see on the field on Saturdays every season, and go get the quality guys. Go get the guys that everybody else is trying to get. And if you're a recruit, Nick, if you follow it that closely and you know what's going on, you're paying attention, you know how to judge. And when signing day comes, you'll know whether or not Florida did a good job. But I think that they're in a position, buddy, to have a huge class.
I also add to that, defend the home turf. Get the key guys in Florida. Don't let them come in here and steal your talent out of state. And I think Dan Mullen is focused on that as well, which will be a big thing for the near future. What about the bowl game? Some people feeling like they've got kind of Michigan burnout, tired of getting beat by the Wolverines, not too excited about playing them again. What are your listeners and readers saying about that?
Yeah, well, I think, buddy, all of my listeners have been disappointed that the Gators ducked to UCF.
Okay.
No, just joking.
Yeah, I know. I heard.
That was such a ridiculous narrative that those Knights fans tried to throw out there. I was tickled to death to see Scott Strickland shoot that down on Twitter. That was awesome. And look, a lot of fans, understandably so, would have liked to see a different team. Would have liked to see UCF maybe. But I think if you're Mullen, his mindset, hey, he lost to Michigan last time he was here with the Gators. They beat his Tim Tebow Heisman Trophy winning quarterback. So you don't think that's on his mind. It damn sure is. And he knows that Florida's never beat the Wolverines, and the last coaches that was here wasn't able to do that. So there's a lot of motivating factors for, I think, Mullen personally. And then if you are a fan, as much as you'd like to see someone else, if you can go out there and beat Michigan, that's it's a feeling you haven't experienced as a Florida fan ever in your life.
Great point, and I think we saw some of that same feistiness before the Florida State game when they said, well, they got this string of bowl games and they have these winning seasons, and he said, I'd like to be the guy who breaks that string. I love that about Mullen when he said, didn't you?
Yeah, and he pays attention to that stuff, and he likes to hear.
He does, yeah.
Yeah, he likes to hear post game. Oh, this is the highest points that we scored since 2008, and those type of stats. That's what get him going.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so let me. I haven't got your thoughts yet on the situation with Urban Meyer. Be regarded as one of the all-time great coaches in football. Certainly, one day there will be his name will be on the Ring of Honor at some point, and maybe Dan Mullen down the road someday has to bring it in and say, let's all forgive and let live, and bring in one of the greatest coaches ever in college football, let alone at Florida. What was your take on how it all happened? Were you shocked or surprised? And what is the feedback from people, many of whom were just wishing nothing but ill toward Urban Meyer? But what was your take on it?
Yeah, buddy, I didn't have as many. I didn't have the experiences with Urban Meyer that many people in Gainesville had. So the people that attest to how great of a person he was, and then the folks that talk about how negative a person he was that didn't really know him. I've heard it all. I've seen it all. At the end of the day, he is one of the greatest coaches of all time, and he clearly has some things going on at Florida and at Ohio State that kept him from doing the job that he loves and that he wants to do. And whether you care for it, whether you buy into it, whether you think it's an act, whether you think it's whatever, the fact of the matter is this: the guy walked away from a top 5 job twice. you don't just do that unless you got some serious issues going on. So I think that he does, and I wish him nothing but good health. I don't think that you walk away from a top 5 job and a dream job unless there's some issues going on. And from that standpoint, all the other stuff is irrelevant about the naysaying and what he did to Florida or didn't do to Florida or what have you. I think it's a shame that one of the greatest coaches of all time had to walk away from 2 top 5 jobs because he couldn't keep it. His health made him do it. So, that's a tough situation. The fact that he's going out, though, with some of that other stuff that happened and the scandal and what have you, it does put a damper on things. But as far as Florida is concerned, I think that Dan Mullen is the perfect guy to be here in Gainesville to kind of get Gator fans to get over it and embrace this guy back whenever that time is right.
Well said. Zach Abolverdi, he's the managing editor of Gator Bait. Real quick, what's the next issue of Gator Bait magazine?
Well, as I told you last week, we get to kind of turn the page now on football and delve into more recruiting. Last week we had a basketball feature in there with the Gators getting the big win in Madison Square Garden. So I'll be covering the game on Saturday, so we'll have some more basketball coverage. And obviously with a huge recruiting weekend, 15 official visitors, we'll have some great coverage from that as well.
Appreciate it, Zach. Have a good weekend.
All right. Thanks for having me, buddy.
You bet. All right, Zach Abolverdi from Gator Bait and the Tailgate Show, updating us on some recruiting stuff. Jason Higdon will be our guest on Monday night. He'll update us on his latest perspective of how things are going. Things apparently swimmingly well from what all I'm hearing and people I'm talking to about it. And there's no question that it's come a long, long way from just a few months ago when it looked very dark and dour to a lot of people. That Florida has turned this program around. I'm not big on giving nicknames and stuff, but if you're going to name this season, like they used to do this in the old days when they did videos, a year-end video, they give a name to it. I would call this season the turnaround, given where it was and where it is. And all of you who've been with me since that day a year ago know what this has been like, this ride we've been on, and understand what we're talking about here, because they're within an eyelash of things going south. If they'd lost to South Carolina, who knows what would have happened, how far this thing would have gone. And after the loss to Missouri and the back-to-back losses, it was tough, and things could have gone south. What I want to say about this, I want you to understand me clearly on it. I'm not saying that Florida is as good a team as Georgia, but using the same theory that some are using about, well, Georgia deserved to be in the Final Four because they played really well against Alabama. And they did. Give them credit for that. But I want you to go back and if you got the game on video, and by the way, I think I've erased mine. If you got DVR or whatever, go back to about 10 minutes to go in the game. And go back to where before Felipe Franks fumbled the ball in the end zone and so on. And look at that situation. If things are different there, I wonder how it might have turned out, because the last touchdown really was meaningless. It was just a fluke interception, as I recall, and it really wasn't. It was a closer game than you thought. Now, I'm not trying to make a case to say Florida should have won the game. Please hear me out. I'm not saying Florida is on the level of Georgia. I'm just saying if you're going to use the argument that there's this much difference between great and good, and you're going to use the argument that Georgia deserved to be one of the 4 teams and that ship has sailed, then you're going to have to also say if you're giving points to Georgia for playing really well, I take as my case the goal line stand by Florida, which was, to me, one of the as great an old goal line stand as I have seen in Florida football history. And I've seen a lot of games. And I think, as Terry Bradshaw said, too bad nothing came of it, because that was phenomenal. I know the number probably says 8, but 8 times inside the 5 or whatever, but it was more because there was a play that was it was a legal motion play, which they called back, and it was incredible that they wound up holding him out on the 1 yard line. What was it, like 4 times in a row with the 1 or something? And this team battled its balls off. And they showed me something there. This shows me the grit that this team has. And to turn around then and lose the game, that loss took so much steam, so much wind out of their sails. They had nothing left for a couple of weeks. A good coach can get the teams back up again. A good coach can usually get teams to play again, but something that is that painful to go through with, when you expended yourself, you have everything out that you had left, and you end up not losing, not winning, and they were flat the next week. That can really cut the heart out of a team. Because they didn't, and they brought it back and won and finished off strong, that tells you the kind of coaches you got at Florida. To me. Yeah, you're right. I'm right with you, Chris. I think you could call it probably, well, I don't know about the NCAA history, but certainly the best goal line stand in Florida football history. Chris says the best in history of college football. So, again, you got to be careful when you start making comparisons and you start talking about the greatest and you start, using the criterion that they played well here, they deserve to be number 4 in the nation. They didn't win. And they lost to LSU on the road. So stop saying that Georgia's on the level of Alabama, because they're not. They're on their way. They're trending up. And, and I give them all the credit in the world. The difference in an elite team, and a really, really good or close, almost great team, is that you don't fake a kick on 4th and 13 in that situation, or whatever it was, 4th and 11. That was a horrible call. And I was talking today at the Denver radio station, Joe Williams' show. I do a show with him out there. And he brought up the fact that it was a terrible game. It was a terrible call, worse he's seen. And it cast a cloud over the program and what have you. I said, let's not let that overshadow the really glass half full, or full completely, for that matter, the way Alabama came out of it and won, and the player who was ready at the right time because he was selfless, because he didn't give up. He waited for his time, and when Jalen Hurts got his time, he took full advantage. And I'll still go back to that quote that Terry gave me, which I love so much. In fact, I'm going to put it on the screen just for the heck of it. That this is this kind of thing that he was going through with right here, a crucible. If you don't know what a crucible is, it's worth looking. And don't be ashamed, because Terry said when he used it, he didn't know either the first time. This is a wonderful language. It's beautifully written, but it has such meaning to it. I'm not going to get all, preachy to you and all that sort of stuff. I just think it's one you ought to put in your billfold or your purse or on your wall, because it says so much. And it says exactly what Jalen Hurts went through with. Like somebody said, might have been Herb Street, ought to be a movie. It's good stuff right there, okay? Okay, I'm going to wrap this program up. Don't forget, we got more coming your way on Recruiting on Monday night with Jason Higdon. Thank you, Johnny. Johnny seems to think I'm right about that. Yeah, and Lynn says Bama had to play the worst game and UJ the best game and still lost. Coaching. You're right, Lynn, and your quote was so right on when you said Florida is a team with a 5-star coach and has had 3-star players. That's trending upward. And Georgia is a team with 5-star players and a 3-star coach. And nothing against Kirby. 3 stars is not terrible. Kirby's going to get there. Kirby's a good coach. Yeah, I've heard this argument, Nolan, about systems. But you know what? Remember who built the systems, all right? You got to give the guy credit. You got to give the guy credit for having a quarterback ready that most places would probably be gone for the program. So the system, when they said, he's a system quarterback, said, so what? He built the system. All credit to him. So Well, Chris says Georgia is a 7-minute, 30-second team better than Florida. Well, interesting way of putting it, right? Yeah, Curie thinks I'm right about that too. So anyway, I just thought that was interesting and something to think about in the next couple of weeks. It's going to be no football this weekend. I won't say no football. It's Army-Navy if you like that kind of game, and it's a great spectacle. I mean, I love the academies. I covered Air Force, but I'm an SEC guy, okay? And I can't get my SEC football. It's hard. But we'll get through it to the bowl games. Then we got a whole – have you looked at the bowls? I got the list out today and started looking. I've decided I'm going to pick every single bowl game. I think I'm going to bet $1 on each one. Every single. What do you think I would do if I took the underdog in every game? What's it, 40 games? How would I do? Would I get 55% with points? I don't know. Maybe I'll try that. We'll see. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for hanging in there. And tomorrow morning, don't forget, tomorrow morning now, it's Football Friday, even though we don't have a Gator game. And we'll have our segments on about the high school playoffs. We'll do some bowl picks, maybe with Joe Williams. France Beard will serve up a measure or two. And I'll play you that Terry Bradshaw bite in that segment I had earlier about Jalen Hurts. All right? So have a good night, everybody. Until tomorrow night, same time, same station.